Good Monday evening, everyone, and welcome to Monday Night Safety Stop. JoJo, I am glad to be back.
I bet you are, and I hope your mother gets going where she needs to real quickly, and getting better quick.
Yeah, well, mother-in-law, it's Krista's
Uh,
mom,
yeah,
so
sorry.
that's the reason we haven't been on the last couple of weeks. She's had some health issues, and so that's kind of limited my time from getting on. But hey, it's good to be back, and I had planned on doing this last week, and something that we don't talk about normally here on Monday Night Safety Stop, but I know Joe done the same thing when he got certified that I did,
Mhm.
learning the dive tables. Now,
Yeah,
I know some people are going to be like, the what? The dive tables. Now, I don't know, of course, for the last 15, 18 years, there's not very many agencies that teach these anymore. They're an option.
yeah, it's an option now, which is, I guess, all right, but at the same time, you lose a lot of understanding the why of what your dive computer's telling you.
Oh yeah, most definitely. And don't get me wrong. I'm not knocking dive computers by no means. I love my
Oh, they're
dive
they're
computers.
great.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love my dive computer. But, there comes instances to where, just knowing what the tables are, as a backup, just in the back of your mind, because years ago there were no computers and the tables is all that we had. And of course, the tables have evolved from when they were first developed back by the U.S. Navy years ago.
Well, they still
And
get updated by the
oh
Navy.
yeah, yeah,
As more research goes on and they find out more, they keep updating them. So
oh
it's
yeah,
still
most
useful.
definitely. And there's a lot of agencies now. I know, for example, Patty still has the recreational dive planner, which is their version of the tables. SSI has their tables on the app. I'm not sure about SDI, Nowie. I don't know how. I'm pretty sure Nowie still has the actual tables. But that's just something, we talk about travel all the time and we talk about, different pieces of equipment, but we hardly ever talk about the nuts and bolts.
Well, I mean, the tables used to be a part of our equipment,
It did,
but we
now,
had a slate with the tables on it, so you could figure out each dive.
oh yeah. I mean, planning your dives, especially if you're doing multiple dives in a day, sitting there and planning your dives out. And that's one thing, when I teach, I say when I get the opportunity to teach an open water class, and most of our instructors are the same way. They'll go over the tables with students just so they have the basic understanding of what the tables are, what the tables can do for you. And of course, we still use computers by standards, but there's going to be times I've had a double computer failure before on a dive trip.
Yeah,
Very first dive.
I typically don't sweat it. If I lost the computer, I wouldn't sweat it because I'd still really know what to do without it. So,
Oh yeah, but that's kind of the mentality of this is how many people would actually know how to read dive tables. If you're watching us, throw up in the comments, if you were taught the tables or if you have no idea what we're talking about. It's just, it would be interesting to see, with all the divers in the world, how many people are still teaching the dive tables.
that'd be very interesting to know how
Yeah.
many do still have it in their curriculum.
I mean, I know a lot of people when, just from the past few years, just talking in conversation, ask them about the tables and they'd be like, the what? And I'm like, the dive tables. You do not learn them in your class, which, like I said, it's not required anymore. So the agencies leave it up to the instructors if they want to or not. So I get it, for time and easeability, here's your dive computer, here's how you use it. We're going to go down, we're going to work with it. All right, here's, you come back up, what's your computer say? But how did we get to computers?
You gotta start somewhere, and it started with the dive table.
Starting with the dive tables, it's one of those things that, you don't have to use them, but it's a good thing. It's a good tool to have in your toolbox in case you don't have a computer, or if you get to wherever you're diving and there's no, your computer doesn't come on. Are you going to cancel the rest of the whole day? Just because you can't get your computer to come on before you get ready to dive. I mean, for a lot of people, depending on where you're diving, that could cancel your whole day.
Yeah. Todd Cheap Denton, he said he's been diving since 1979, and he didn't have a computer. It's a lot better these days,
Yeah.
though.
Well, I mean, it does. I mean, like I said before, I love my dive computer. I wouldn't trade them for anything. But I still like having that peace of mind of, hey, I know how to read the tables, so if something was to happen, I can still read it and figure out, do I need to end my dive day, or do I need to, or where am I at on these tables?
Yeah.
you know and something you also have to think of with computers, the main benefit of a computer is the real-time adjustment in depth.
That's
So
the big advantage right there is the adjustments you get.
yeah, so if you're not familiar with the tables, and I'm going to lay this out just as simply as I can, the tables are literally, go in, you go down to whatever your max depth is, you stay at that depth for the entire period, and then you come up. That's what it's based on. Where computers, take into account, if you come up a foot, you go down a foot, whatnot, it recalculates that. So, to an extent, it gives you more bottom time.
More bottom time. And then surface interval. It keeps that down to a minute, you know?
Hmm.
And I mean, as soon as you in the dive, pretty much when you're back at the surface, start your surface interval.
Oh, yeah.
Right? You know, oh, when did we get out of the water? And everybody's discussing, that was 15 minutes ago or 30 minutes ago.
Oh, yeah. What's your computer got? Oh, it's saying
Yeah.
45 minutes.
So, you're back at the surface. You know exactly how much surface time you got.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I would not trade my computers for anything. I love my Shearwater. I love both of them. But again, the tables are, it's the foundation. It's the
Yeah,
foundation. Huh?
designed by the military or the navies, using 21-year-olds in great physical shape, literally putting them down there, watching them get bent.
Yep.
Then they go, oh, how do we stop this from happening? And then they just start shortening and shortening the dive time at each depth until they
Oh,
hit
yeah.
that magic number. So,
Yeah. Well, I don't know about you, but it's been a long time since I was 21 and in
21
good
and in
physical
such
shape.
good shape, I was never there.
Yeah, shape. I was never there. But I mean, again, the training agencies have taken that data and they have compiled to create their own version of the tables. I mean,
Right.
back in the 60s and 70s, the only table that was available was the US Navy dive tables. And so, there was nothing else. And then of
No,
course,
that was
yeah,
made on trial and error. And then
yeah.
after that, the science started coming in, and we started learning about tissue loading and how saturations on each different tissue level. So
Mhm. Oh yeah. Now, and I'm incorporating this in with the talks that we're having here about dive tables. And I don't know if anybody has heard of it or seen it, but that new movie that just come out about saturation diving, Last Breath. So it's about a saturation diver who was working on an oil rig, and the ship that they were working off of lost their positioning system. It went down. So their ship started drifting because there's a storm. And long story short, it ripped his umbilical. He was stuck on this rig 300 feet down. I think it was like a total of 40 something minutes before they were able to get back and get to him. But the science behind diving is the same.
Yep.
It doesn't matter 300 feet or 30 feet. The science of it is the same. The pressures aren't. You're taking, an atmosphere of pressure versus 10 atmospheres of pressure. So the science is the same. Again, dive tables, nuts and bolts, it's the science of diving.
Yeah. Of course, we talk about saturation diving. Now that's going past the dive tables.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
We talk about
Way.
no decompression, and then we talk about tech diving, where they start
Mhm.
doing decompression diving.
Oh, yeah.
And then next further up is total saturation, live on the bottom of the ocean for a whole month.
Oh, yeah.
Uh, so
Yeah. And I mean, essentially, that's what those type of divers do. I mean, they're operating 10 times, at least, or I say at least, an average of 10 times the normal pressure, surface pressure, where we as recreational fun divers, we may hit 4 atmospheres if you're doing a deep dive.
yeah,
So, recreational limit, 130 feet. So, you know, it's one of those things that, how much pressure is exerted against you? How much O2 are you absorbing? How much nitrogen are you absorbing? You know, that's something that we have to know so that when we start our ascent, do our safety stop, we're off gassing. The tables was or is it's a baseline per se.
yeah, that's where it started. That's
Yeah.
the first data point right there to get us where we are today.
Oh, yeah. And like you said, where we are today is dive computers, dive computers, dive computers. Pay attention to your dive computer, which is important. But, 30 years ago, dive computers were a luxury.
Yeah, I mean in the '90s, or
Yeah.
the early 2000s, they're just starting to really get popular. I
Yeah.
showed you my very first computer. We couldn't even get it in freaking Imperial mode. It was stuck in metric.
So we actually have the very first dive computer I seen was before I got certified. Of course, Dad has been diving since 1964, and he got a computer. It was in the late 80s. I don't know, 88, 89 ish. Um, but I mean, you look at that computer versus what we have on the market today, and you're like, that's nothing more than a glorified bottom timer.
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, really. And we actually have one.
Calculator.
Yeah, we have one. It's not the exact one he had, but it's the same brand that we got from a dive shop years ago, brand new, still in the box. And I mean, this is like it's a relic, but it's so interesting to see where dive computers came from. This is what started it off. These computers here. And now you see you've got, you know, air integration computers, keep up with your sac rate, keep up with, nitrogen loading, all this stuff. There's even a computer on the market that has a nitrox analyzer on it.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're getting to the point where they can give you your GPS unit now underwater.
oh yeah. I mean, which and I don't know if you've been keeping up with it. We talked about it just before we come on the show. There was in Australia, I think last week or the week before, There were a couple of divers stranded. The boat left them. I'm like, how does that? I mean, I've heard of it happening. Years ago, there was a movie that come out called Open Water. I don't know if you ever seen it, but
I've seen open water, yes.
I
And
sat there the first time I watched it. I sat there and I called out, "That's BS. That's BS. That's BS." Okay, that could happen, you know. But this is actually the first time I have heard in a long time of that happening, and none other than on Australia. You know.
oh, I mean, we're not used to it, but the current's strong enough, and you end up a mile and a half away from the boat.
Hmm.
I can
It can
see
happen.
that. Uh, but boat just pulling anchor because, well, they miscounted on the boat or something, I guess.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's no telling, but and it could have been something like we were talking about. Maybe they were down longer than they were supposed to. Some people like to push for that hour mark there, don't they, JoJo?
Yeah. Well, I mean, my last trip they said an hour. That's what I stuck with is 1 hour. I'd I'd take my group and they're done in about 45 minutes. I'd get them to the boat, then I'd go enjoy my 15 minutes, but I was getting my hour.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's the good thing about the tables. If you know how to read the tables, it has the time frame, time increments in it. Some of them are listed, or most of them are listed in minutes. So you've got your minute range, from 0 to whatever, and it kind of carries on. I don't have them in front of me or I would quote them. But, and then it has your depth. And that's the way we learned to dive. I didn't have a Shearwater uh, Peregrine or a Terric or a Perdix. I had the Patty recreational dive planner slate.
Yeah, I find it probably a little bit of lost knowledge is planning your next couple dives out and in front of your first dive because you're not looking at the table.
Yeah.
So, what's your depth going to be on your first, second, and third, and what time frame are you wanting those dives at?
Oh yeah. Well, I remember
Nowadays,
on the final
jumped
exam.
in, yeah, on that third dive, and our computer saying, you can't go to 80 feet because your NDL will be busted, but you wanted to go look at that wreck at 110. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
the tables really help plan the dives out.
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, it's a baseline. And like I said, I remember when I went through open water, there were final exam questions. It says you are planning a dive to, 40 feet. You're planning on being there for 60 minutes. What pressure group are you coming out as? And then the next question following it was, okay, after this dive, you plan an hour surface interval. What pressure group are you going back into the water? So
Yeah,
like if you missed that one question, that very first question, the next two or three were going to be wrong because you just, you didn't read the tables right.
and it seemed like we spent a good 4 hours just practicing the tables in class.
Oh yeah.
Like
Well,
you're saying.
and they are intimidating. Don't get me wrong. If you've never seen the dive tables before and you take a look at it, you're going to be like, deer in the headlight look like, what is this? Because you see all these numbers and it says depth and time and you see this number and that number, especially on the back table 3, where you figure your residual nitrogen time and then you got two sets of numbers in a little block and it's like, okay, what the heck am I looking at? They can be intimidating if you don't know them.
Agree. Much better with a computer.
Oh yeah, I mean, but it's still kind of fun for me to after doing multiple dives in a day to go back and look at my max depth on each dive and my max time and my surface interval and just do them on the tables just to see how much difference there is.
Yeah. And
Because
then,
again, tables are baseline. Computers actually give you more because of real time data.
yeah, with tables, I mean, you're basically limited to 2, 3 dives a day. You couldn't do these 5
Yeah.
dives, marathons.
So Jojo, let me ask you a real quick question here. I'm looking, my screen's saying there's 5 comments, but I don't see any comments in my comment box. Do you have any?
I do.
Uh,
Your dad's on here with
okay.
Todd. Uh, Mike's
Well,
on here.
okay.
Todd's pretty much been on here commenting, showing
Well,
how
that's what you
old he
say.
is with everybody else.
I'm seeing on the screen says there's 5 comments, but in my comment box it says no comments yet. So I
Yeah, you
don't
might need
know.
to refresh that.
Yeah, maybe. Oh, there we go. I did have all I had to do was refresh it. Yeah, looks like Dad's here. Todd says he did in 1979, like diving a computer a whole lot better. Oh yeah, I would not give up my computer for sure. So, and I'm going to tell this story on the tables. Dad says John Land can tell you I still know the tables. So when we done our Patty crossover back in 2015, in the crossover you had to use that little computer or little calculator called the ERDPML from Patty. So if you guys know what I'm talking about, literally it looks like a little calculator and you enter your information. So while we were doing our test, test questions on the tables, right? So Dad actually, he was filling it out, working on it. He's trying to use this ERDPML and he got the questions wrong. And of course, the instructor, examiner, told him, hey, this isn't right. You got this one wrong. Dad argued with him. The man knows the tables frontwards and backwards. He's been diving since 1964. So of course he brings up the argument. No, this thing's not right. Come to find out, he was right. That little calculator thing had a malfunction and it wasn't calculating it correctly.
Oh, jeez.
So he actually won that argument. I mean, oh yeah. And if John was on here, I know he would recall it. But
Oh, man, that'd be an experience. Yes, the teacher's wrong.
yeah, exactly. Todd said,
You.
yeah. Todd says his first computer was an Orca. Yeah. That's the brand that. No, actually, is it the Orca? No, the one that we've got that I have in our archives is no, it is an Orca because the one Dad had was a Skinny Dipper. It's made by the same company. They look identical, but just a different model. But yeah. So, I mean, computers, man, have they made life in diving so much easier? Yes, they have. But again, we wouldn't have computers without what, JoJo?
Wouldn't have them without the dive tables.
Yep, exactly.
And it's funny too, because about all of them have a different kind of algorithm that
Oh
you
yeah.
can program to your diving style. So
Well, and it's one of those things that you're talking about that. So I know, and I'm not a tech diver, so I'm not even going to venture into that realm. But there are different algorithms like especially in the shearwater, that you have to switch that to if you're doing that type of diving. The Perdix does
yeah,
it, the Terek does it, the Tern and the Peregrine do not. They are strictly recreational. But if you have a Perdix or a Terek, you have to be able to know how to switch those if that's the type of diving you're doing.
Mouse, yeah, which was a recreational computer, had a choice of two algorithms. One
Yeah.
was if you wanted to do deeper dives and be a little bit more relaxed on, let's say, the second and third dive, it was a little bit more conservative on the front end.
Yeah.
Then you had another one if you wanted to do a lot multiple shorter dives, you could pick that one. So,
Yeah.
by the way you wanted to dive, you could pick which algorithm you wanted.
Oh, yeah. And Dave Lowney says he still has his ERDPML. And James Todd says computers make it so easy. It's the truth. I mean, you look at it, and anybody who's been diving for, years remembers when, computers first come out or right as they first come out. they were glorified bottom timers. You know, nitrox wasn't heard of. You know, and then as nitrox has grown more popular, now you know as well as I do, back in the old days when you had took a nitrox class and you had to do a dive with nitrox, you had three different tables. You had your air equivalency table, you had your actual nitrox table, and then you had your O2 clock table, so you could figure out your saturations. And I mean, computers today have taken all that away.
Not needed.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean there is actually a maximum amount of time you can dive on nitrox in a day.
but the
That
most in,
that clock.
yeah, but the most important thing to remember on your computers is set it in nitrox mode and put in your percentage. Because
Yes,
if you
most
don't,
important.
it's going to be all messed up.
Yeah, yeah. All any advantage you want is gone.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that's the reason I like when I go on a dive trip or something. You know, I'll look and see when I analyze the cylinders. If I've got 32%, I'll check my second one. If it's got 32%, I know I don't have to change my computers. But if I've got one at say 32 and the other one at 33, then I know on the surface interval I've got to change that.
Yeah,
So,
I've had dives where I've had to change it.
oh yeah, and most of them are simple to do. You know, it's a whole
Yeah,
lot
yeah.
easier than pulling all these tables out. Hold on, let me figure this out.
Of course, you gotta watch out for the. You can't get it back into air mode. You have to put it at 21%.
Well, and that's something I tell nitrox students is, you know, if you're when they're doing their nitrox class, when you set your computer to nitrox mode, you know, there's really no need to switch it from air to nitrox, back to air, back to nitrox. There's no need to switch it. Just change your yeah, percentage from 32 down to 21, or vice versa. If you're going to be diving on air, put it on 21. It's an extra step you don't have to keep doing to switch the mode. Again, 21% is air, regular air. You know, so if you dial that in, it's going to say nitrox on your computer, and then it's going to say 21%. So if you're not real familiar with how to get into and change those settings on computers, again, that's another easy way where you don't have to, is just leave it in nitrox mode. Of
Yep.
course, I'm sure there's some people that would argue, no, you got to change it to air if you're on air. No, you don't. It's 21%. 21% nitrox is the same as air. So it's no different.
And then that's always a funny one. How do I get it back?
But you know, I was talking a while ago, you know, about the confusion of the tables if you've never seen them before, and most people, you know, who have been diving 10, 15, 20 years or older, have a familiarization with the tables. You know, they've seen them, they probably had to work them. You know, I'm going to say probably within the last 10 years since they've done the update on standards and they're not required to be taught. You know, luckily there's
Years
still
they
some,
started
huh?
phasing it out. Here, with the last 5 years, they've made it just optional.
Well, they started phasing it out back between 2010 and 2015 is when they started kind of computers were taking over and you know, in training classes. And then I know for SSI 2015, I think 2015 or 2016 is when they made it optional. You can teach them, but you're not required to teach them. Computers, you're required. So, and most of the agencies done that about the same time. I think SDI was actually the first one to actually go all computers on in their training classes. And then, you know, everybody else kind of followed suit. But, you know, let's talk about the residual nitrogen table. I mean, that one there is one, you know, when I sit down with students and I start explaining the tables, you know, if you're doing one dive and that's all you're doing, the table is super easy and super simple. But it's when you get into the surface interval and a repetitive dive that you got to be able to figure out your residual nitrogen time. Computers does that for you. It's such a great feature. I mean, just look at my computer. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, all right. Dive plan mode. Hey, I can stay at 60 feet for 20 minutes. You know,
Yep.
makes it easy. But when you look at those tables on table three, what they call table three, um, I think with Patty, you just got two sides. You've got table one and two on the first side, which is your calculation table and your surface interval, and then on the back is your repetitive dive or your residual nitrogen time.
Oh, like you go and you get your residual, then you go back to table A, and you get pretty much penalized. You be pushed to a different column,
Oh yeah.
and
Well, I
then
mean,
that's how you plan the next one. And
it's
then
it's
eventually you run out of columns that you could be in.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's counting what how much you've got built up already. Of course, the longer you stay on a surface interval, the shorter that time gets. And so we take that time, whatever our surface interval is going to be at the end of it, we take that time, add it to what we're planning to dive for our next dive, and then we calculate our pressure group that way to see if we can make that dive or not. I mean, I used to hate the tables. I absolutely hated the tables until I became an instructor and actually was able to get the flow of how the tables really work and go through and yeah, it's a lot of work, especially learning the tables, but after you get it, it's one of those things. Like I said, I like, after a day of diving, I look at my computers, I'm logging my dives, I like to grab my tables and just see the difference. Well, here's what the tables say I could do. you know I extended my bottom time just because I wasn't at 40 feet for 45 minutes. I was 40 foot, and then went over a coral head, and I was at 32 foot, back down to 40. So those calculations, I mean, that gains you a little bit of time.
Hmm. Yeah, and then safety stops. You get a little timer on there tells you when you cleared your safety stop.
I was just sitting there. I had to refresh. I'm having to refresh my comments, so I
I've had
apologize.
that happen a couple times. I'm sitting there refreshing.
Yeah, because it's like, I'm not seeing them, and then I hit the refresh, and then boom, new ones pop up. Um, so I see Sean. I apologize, Sean. It says you posted it 6 minutes ago. It says, thank God for dive computers. I'm right there with you. Makes it so much easier. Dave says, I'm glad I helped teach, as I would completely forget my tables. And that's the reason why I like to go back after a day of diving and just, see the differences, because it keeps my brain in flow with using the tables, and I can actually, see the difference, what my dive computer says, what the tables say. That's what I like about it. Since I don't get to teach a whole lot anymore. I still like to teach the tables, though. I have to say, I do like to teach the tables. It's one of those things when you take an open water student and you see their eyes when they first see the tables. It's like, what's this? And then after working with them and get them to in the flow of figuring it out, then it's like, oh, that makes sense. It's like a light switch. And it's really good to see that. I love seeing that almost as much as I love seeing the eyes when you get underwater and they take that first breath. It's just like, I can breathe. That's kind of the way I understand the tables. Oh, let's see here. All right. I just refreshed to make sure I wasn't missing anybody else. I don't know why this thing's doing this tonight.
Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
That's a reason.
Yeah. Oh, but anyway, like I was saying earlier, if you've been diving for any period of time, you're familiar with the dive tables. The dive tables really, that's where we get our computer information. That's what these algorithms are based off of.
Yep.
So
Hey,
it doesn't matter if you're
that's
diving
smart.
a, $1,800 Garmin computer, or if you're diving a $400, $500 Peregrine. It's based on the same information, and that same information is on a little bitty slate that cost about $5. I mean,
Pretty
really,
much. Yeah.
maybe $10 with today's inflation. I don't know. You know,
Yeah.
if you're
It's
an
true.
SSI diver, you can get it on your app for free. So
It
I mean,
gets you on there. It get it done. Uh, you can go get that fancy waterproof Rolex at that point.
well, I'll never forget it when I was in open water class back, right after Moses parted the Red Sea, because Dad got certified beforehand. And anyway, we were
He, would-
told that we
he
needed a
went and met
what?
Jesus right there.
Do what?
He went and met Jesus in person.
Yeah. Well, and that was one thing we were told was when you start class for your checkout dives, you need to have a watch that has a rotatable bezel so that you can, keep up with your dive time. And that's exactly how I learned, to dive was, this cheap little watch that had a turnable bezel and my dive tables. And I used those, I guess my first dive computer, and I can't remember the name of it. I got it in early 2000s. I got it used. But it was air integrated. Um, was it Nemo or Nemesis? Something like that. I can't remember exactly. I still got it. It's at the shop. Uh, but it had the transmitter for this thing was a brick, and that brick had two little hose clamps that clamped onto your high pressure hose, and then it screwed into the opposite side for your high pressure, and then that brick transmitted to your wrist. And just to see where the AI has come to, I mean, it's nothing more than a little transmitter pod that just screws on now. I mean, it's interesting to see when we talk about dive tables, science of diving, where we were versus where we are now.
Yeah. And then, well, then you take it over to the saturation side where you're just going to take everything in all at once and live with it for a month.
I was just reading Sean's comment says we live in Kentucky and Tennessee. There's not many light switches going on there. I thought he was living in Bon Air and Utila and all that. I mean, you know,
That's where I always see. He's like, I
I
didn't
know.
even know he came back to the States.
I didn't know he actually lived around here anymore. We're just picking on you, Sean. But he's not wrong. Oh goodness, man, oh man. But yeah, I think back to that computer that I think it was a Nemesis. But I think back to the Orca, like Todd was talking about, the Skinny Dipper. These things were. I'm not going to say they were big or bulky, but they wasn't as small as what computers are now. Um, but to go from that to like that Nemesis where it was air integrated and had that big brick for a transmitter to the Shearwater, the Garmin, Mares, with the little pod, transmitter pods, you just screw them right in. And then, same thing on your wrist. Just the technology that has been built off of the U.S. Navy dive tables. Did I lose you? Oh,
No, I'm here.
oh, okay. But yeah, I mean, well, you was certified YMCA originally, right?
Right. We did
Okay.
dive
So,
tables.
so tell us about the YMCA tables, because I'll be honest with you, I've never even seen the YMCA tables.
Pretty standard. I think it was a little bit more conservative than the Patty was.
Gotcha.
Our max depth was 100 feet.
Mm.
So
Well, and that's something else that has changed over the years since I got certified. Was when I got certified, the max depth for open water was not 60 feet. It was the maximum recreational limit, 130. You could take the advanced open water, and that gave you, excuse me, intro to deep diving and navigation, plus whatever you picked. But you got certified. You were certified to go down to 130 feet.
okay, so no, they actually just had the. Actually, got it right here.
Hmm.
It looks very similar to Patty's.
Oh yeah.
How readable that is.
Well,
But,
you're not getting it on the screen.
yeah, but you can't get to 130 feet on here. You got a bottom time of 5 minutes, so it's
Yeah,
touch and go.
and
But at the
that's
same time, here's what I remember: is this note right over here says, novice divers can dive to 60 feet. Advanced divers have max depth of 100 feet.
yeah.
So, but never go past the 130.
Yeah, and that's that was basically when I was taught open water years ago. That's what it was. I mean, you learn the tables, 130 feet. Make sure you follow the tables,
Yeah,
and
so
it wasn't.
that's an old book.
Oh yeah. Well, considering that Y Scuba has been out for 20 years, probably a little
I mean,
over
this
20 years.
this is what the book they use. Still got it.
Yeah. Well, let's see. You got certified what? 2000, 2001,
2002.
2002. Okay,
Yeah.
so I knew it was early 2000s when Y Scuba, when they actually shuttered their scuba program, but I didn't know. It must have been 2004, 2005, but it's been about 20 years since Y Scuba has been a thing. But, like I said, every agency adopted kind of their own tables based on the data in the U.S. Navy dive tables. For example, SSI has taken their table study further and done Doppler studies to, so their Doppler limits are based on, bubbles in the blood system. They do Doppler studies on it. And so you get a little bit more with that, but that's the reason. I don't know if YMCA does it or they did it, but if you look at Patty's recreational dive planner, your pressure groups are A through Z. SSI is not. It's A through H or I, if I'm not mistaken. So it's like half.
Now what? It went through Z.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
uh,
most people,
we went through N.
and yeah, most people who, if they learned on Patty, if they learned on Nowie, I mean, the tables are going to differ just between the agencies, but the information, the data that's built on is based on the same table from the U.S. Navy.
There also should be more conservative than the Navy tables.
Yeah. Oh, they are. Yeah.
So
Yeah. That's
we
why I
always
said,
talk about not getting bent down, and then we go, "Oh, we're a minute past our bottom time. We're going to get bent." No, that's not really how it works.
oh, yeah. Well, and I think it was 2 or 3 years ago. Now SSI come out with their decompression class. Now you hear that in recreation, you're thinking, why are we doing decompression in recreation? So there was a little bit of misconception with that program. So it wasn't to teach you how to dive and do a decompression dive. what it was designed for was for people who, may be doing deep dives that may exceed the table by a couple of minutes, just enough to where I think it's anything under 5 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to clarify that point, but it's not a super amount of time. It doesn't teach you how to do decompression diving. It was meant to teach you if you go over the tables or go over slightly, how to safely do your ascent, through decompression methods. It wasn't designed to, hey, well, I don't have to pay attention to my computer or my tables. All I got to do is go dive and then I follow the decompression theory. And, no, that's not the way that program was designed. And I think there was some, there was some, yeah, I lost the train of thought or the word,
Yeah,
misconception.
I took the Inno's advice. It wasn't in the training agency or whatnot. It was just homegrown experience. That if you were to break it, you were to do a 15-minute safety stop instead of a five.
Yeah.
We did 5 minute safety stops. It wasn't here. I don't know when they started doing the threes, but when we learned it, it was 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, I know when I done Patty years ago, it was, they didn't specify 3 or 5. They said 3 to 5 minutes. The deeper you've been, you want to extend it closer to the 5. If you're doing a shallower dive, 30, 40 foot, 3 minutes, 50, 60, 70, you want to kind of extend that up to 5 minutes for your safety stop, and
Uh,
especially open water divers, when you teach them, as far as your safety stop, you know, and I know a lot of instructors do, but I have actually encountered people who's like, well, I know we do a safety stop, but why are we doing a safety stop? I've only dove 30 feet. Well, 30 feet still double the pressure from what you're used to on the surface. You're still going to get, more nitrogen buildup. So it's, you have to do one? Technically at 30 feet, you probably wouldn't, but it's a good idea. To be safe, to go ahead, yeah, to practice. Go ahead and make that a, just a constant, do your safety stop for 3 minutes. If you're down longer, or down deeper, extend it out a little bit. Just, it's not going to hurt anything as long as your air supply lasts, as long as you've got adequate air.
yeah, nothing wrong with making your dive longer anyway.
Oh no. Especially, like at the end of the dive, if you're in the Caribbean and, like I remember you was on the trip with me when we had that big manta ray, I think had, or not manta, I'm sorry, eagle ray.
You were
Come,
right
had
behind
about a 6 foot, wingspan. This thing was huge. And it was right at the end of the dive. And it's like, ooh, I just want to sit here and watch because he was circling us. And, you do your safety stop, you sit there and watch, and, I could watch them things all day.
Oh yeah, yeah. That some of the safety. It's like when we went on the boat. They had a ladder on the or bar on the back, and the boat would swing back and forth, and I just ride on that bar, thinking it was the funnest thing in the world.
Joe don't need an amusement park. Just give him a safety bar at 15 foot. He's fine.
Yeah, I mean it was just hold on to the bar and it drag you through the water, through the whole reef for whatever 300-foot swing it had. It was awesome.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, but, safety stops, are they important? Yes, they are. Even if you're not diving deep, um, they really come into play more the more dives you do during the day, because you
Yeah,
have that residual nitrogen built up.
yeah.
So,
Start off closer to the level,
yeah.
getting the bent, being bent than you were on your first dive, even if it was short,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
shallow.
You know,
Still got it.
most like vacationing divers, you're going on vacation, but you're not quote unquote on a dive trip. Like, let's say, for example, you're going to Panama City to vacation with the family. You get one day that you can go out on the boat, you know, as long as you follow your dive computer, your tables, and you're not doing deep dive or doing a deep dive, whether it's one dive or two, you know, if you're doing 30 feet, say, out in a bay or, a shallow wreck, it's only one dive. That's all you're doing, go ahead and do that safety stop. It's not going to hurt anything. Um, so go ahead and get it done. And, 30 feet, you're just coming up half the distance of the depth and
Right.
you're off gassing.
Right.
So,
Off gassing, and you get new perspective. You'd be surprised the difference in what it looks at 30 feet and 15 feet.
oh yeah. Well, one thing I found interesting, of course, we was talking about that story with the sat diver. If you're just tuning in, we've been kind of talking about the nuts and bolts of of diving, the science behind it, and with the tables and stuff. But one interesting thing that I found out, by researching that story, watching it and watching the movie, was that when these guys go in, they get on the boat, they immediately go into a chamber and they pressurize them, and they're there for, they're at that pressure for 28 days or, close to it. They come out day 28. So,
Yeah, and it takes them about a week to decompress
yeah, oh, yeah,
in a chamber.
yeah, oh, yeah.
And there's a lot of good YouTube videos. They'll even tell you how to use the bathroom, and that's an interesting
Oh, yeah. Well,
info right there.
I mean, I don't want to be. I don't want to be stuck in a tin can, where I can touch the sides, not even extending my hands out.
I
or
mean,
my arms.
you get 4, 5, 6 sweaty guys into a little freaking tube.
Yeah,
You're gonna know each other really well.
yeah. Separated by a curtain.
Yeah.
That's it. Hope they didn't eat Taco Bell before they come in.
The operation is 24 hours. There's usually 12 on, 12 off. There's half the crew's in the bell, half the crew's in the chamber.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Working while the other one's sleeping. So.
But again, the science is the same.
Yep. So
The science
you're
is exactly the same.
saturated. You don't have to worry about it as long as you don't come up from that depth. You can stay there.
Yep.
As soon as you start coming up, that's when you have your issues. And I say they take literally a week mixing different gases. There's a
Oh, yeah. Well, and that's one thing that I find really interesting. And I'm amazed that there's not other agencies that really do an independent class like SSI does with Science of Diving. Now, you can do, dive theory and all that through PADI, but it's part of the PADI Dive Master program. So I don't know about SDI if they have something similar. NAUI, I don't know if they have like just a, the theory and the physics behind just a program that kind of focuses on that as a specialty. I think it's a great program. It introduces, as far as a regular diver, not a dive pro, just a recreational diver, it introduces them into, the dive theory and the physics behind, what they learned in open water. We learn about some of it in open water. Boyle's Law, Charles' Law, Dalton's Law, Henry's Law, the Archimedes Principle. You learn a little bit about that, but you don't get in-depth detail about it. You learn why this law affects this law affects that, pressure, temperature, all of that, but you don't get the in-depth look of it.
Yeah, that was, it's a good class. I had to do it for some reason. I don't know why.
Well, again, it
It
goes
was a good class.
yeah, it goes it goes further than what you learn in open water. And I really think, and like I said, I don't know that PADI, I haven't seen one, like just a class like that PADI offers. I'm not sure about NAUI. SDI, I'm not really sure because, I'm not affiliated with either of those agencies. But, like SSI has the Science of Diving, which is kind of the nuts and bolts, behind how we dive, why we dive, how we dive. And so I think maybe there's people out there that maybe they'd be interested in doing a class like that. Um, but it gives you more of the why we do what we do without having to go through a dive master program, dive pro. It kind of gives you a foundation.
Okay, and knowing that foundation, controversial question for recreational divers, not tech. Deep safety stop. You dive to 100. Now we're going to do a safety stop at 50 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, no. What do you think? It ain't taught in class.
What's that?
Deep safety stop.
Deep safety stop should be 60 feet.
50, 60 feet?
Yeah.
Somewhere there. It's usually about half of your dive depth.
Yeah. The way I learned it was if you exceed 100 foot, then it's always a good idea to do a safety at 60 for 3 to 5 minutes, and then 15 foot for another 3 to 5 minutes.
Yeah. That's the way I was taught. Now I don't even think that's in the books anymore.
Most of them now, they say follow your dive computer. Now I know my computers, both of them will, that if I exceed 100 foot, then at 60 foot, it tells me to do a safety stop, which I think is
I know. I know. I try to. I try to hover around 60 for a while. But
on your Perdix.
either so it's confident. Now settings might not be set up right too.
I was going to say it's probably a setting, just a setting in there. All right, JoJo, it is 8:57. My goodness, how time has flown tonight. When I get into something that I really love, I could sit here and talk science of diving, for the rest of the night. But I know JoJo's got to work in the morning, and got some things I got to do in the morning, like take care of the kiddo going to school and other errands. So we'll go ahead. Actually, we got 2 minutes left. So, JoJo, any final thoughts for tonight?
Couple weeks, man. We're going to be at the quarry, so we get the place opened up, getting ready. And I'm hoping here shortly that you're going to have some nice announcements to share. So stay tuned for those.
Let's see. I'm just checking something.
Peter there, right up on the back side of things.
Yeah, we are 25 days from opening season.
There we go. Pool's open.
It's about to be open. I don't know with all this rain and stuff. I mean, it's kind of murky right now.
Yeah, we're talking about that. Look at the back picture there.
Oh, yeah, we forgot to mention that. So we forgot to mention that. So if you look at the picture behind us on the background, you'll notice the helicopter and you'll notice the divers. Well, if you notice at the top of the helicopter where it goes from dark to light, that is where the water level is right now. So we are almost 2 feet above average. You can barely see, just the top portion of it, just from all the rain that we have had over the last month. So water level is up.
From the picture you posted the other day, it was at the roof of the helicopter. Every one of those divers would be underwater right now.
Oh yeah, most definitely. Well, you might be able to see the top, the hood of the one right next to it. Not the one bending over, but maybe. Maybe.
You're just go look at the helicopter right now.
Let's see. James posted here. I had to refresh. James posted, if I'm not mistaken, I think Patty still offers refresher, and they go over the tables in pretty detail. Not mistaken. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they may. I mean, it just depends on who's doing the class. It's one thing I don't like. If I'm doing a refresher student, I'll ask them questions just to kind of see where they're at. If they know the tables, if they've ever heard of the tables. I mean, because this day and age, if a diver, if a student comes through, whoever, and they don't teach them the tables, then it's going to be hard for me to do a refresher a couple of years down the road. And all right, you know about the dive tables? The what? So then it's like, okay, do I teach them the entire tables? Most of the times I'll give them the basic concepts of it. But it is one thing that, we make sure they know, how to use their computer. Again, tables have become optional.
Yep.
I mean, that's the sad thing. They have become optional if you want to introduce a student to the dive tables.
Well, at least hopefully they're always diving with their computer.
And they don't have a computer malfunction.
Yeah, I mean, my last understanding, computers weren't mandatory in class.
Yeah. Well, and that's the reason I dive with with two computers, dive a dual computer configuration. That way, in case one does go out, I've still got a backup. You know,
You know,
so
helps if they're the same brand type too, so you don't mix up algorithms.
yeah. Well, and I know we're a little bit over. I don't care. Yeah. Anyway,
Transmitters, don't mix up transmitters.
well, the transmitters, and you bring that fact up. With the Perdix several years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, if you were diving side mount, you had to have a gray transmitter and a yellow transmitter, one on each tank. And the reason for that is because they were synchronized different timing so that it wouldn't interfere with the readout on your computer. And there were several people who were taking just two gray computers or transmitters and sticking them on doubles, and them being so close, it conflicted and would not read right on the computers. That's the reason they done the dual transmitters that way. And then it was probably 5 or 6 years ago when Shearwater come out with their new Swift transmitter, and that kind of eliminated it. That the transmitters talk to each other, so it kind of eliminated that. But that's a story for a different time. All
Uh,
right. What?
James is asking about if maybe one day we could go over the history of the quarry.
The history of the quarry. Well, I don't foresee that would be a problem. I mean, we've only got 30 years of history behind us, so we look up and forward, and so we can reflect. You know, I've got several old pictures, from the early days and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, if folks want to hear it, then hey, I got tons of stories. Tons of stories. But the biggest part of what the quarry is you guys. It's the divers that comes and dives with us each and every season, and you guys coming in and supporting the quarry. It allows us to be able to do more things, offer more infrastructure for you guys, and so it's not us, it's you guys who have made it what it is. And I would love to sit and talk about that. You know, I could go over an hour on it.
Just on the people that come, yeah, people, y'all are great. That's why we do what we do. I drag my family down there every other weekend just to hang out, gossip.
Oh
We
yeah.
don't even dive every weekend. We just hang out. So
Oh yeah. And I love diving. I have loved diving since I was 12 years old, and I will continue to love it. But we don't always get to dive, all the time. And so when we're busy making sure you guys are out there having fun and have what you need to enjoy your visit, that's another part of the job that is fun, because even though we can't be in the water, we enjoy that other people get to share that, and it's great.
yeah, why put together trips? Come get everybody together to hang out and enjoy, have a good time. That's probably
Yep.
my favorite thing about it. So,
You know, the old saying is true: eat, sleep, dive, repeat. Pretty much. All right, guys, it is after that 9 o'clock hour, and we want to thank you guys for tuning in with us. JoJo's laughing.
That's my next tattoo.
Your next tattoo: eat, sleep,
Yeah.
dive, repeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Eat, sleep, dive, repeat. JoJo's new motto. All right.
Yep.
But
Good night, everybody.
anyway, all right, guys, we started the show back in 2020 as a way for all of us to get together and go talk about the sport that we all love and enjoy, and that's diving. Whether it's at the park, Caribbean vacation, worldwide, wherever, we always enjoy sitting down, and we thank you for spending your Monday night with us. We couldn't do it without you guys, and we just appreciate you tuning in, giving us an hour of your time to listen to us ramble about the sport that we love. And so hopefully everything continues to be on and upwards, and I will get to not have to postpone the show. Hopefully, I'm keeping my fingers crossed due to family health. But anyway, if I do, we'll put that announcement out. But other than that, we're 25 days away from the start of the 2025 season. Our season pass holders, I know, are ready and raring to go. I know you guys are ready and raring to go, just not in 47-degree water. So hopefully, one real quick tidbit here. We have data from our temperature system that will be a complete year's worth of data come May. And so at that point, we will be releasing that. We'll be making a post on that so that everybody can see how the temperatures climb and when they start to fall. So I think right now it's showing the peak temperature was in August, which is correct. But it's really interesting to see. But we're going to release that once we have a year's worth of data, and that way. Well, what's the temperature that, this time of year? Let's see. This is what it was. So, kind of give you an idea. Anyway, if you're diving this weekend, we hope you have a fun, safe, and adventurous diving weekend. And we can't wait to see you guys when we open the season, April 12th at 9 a.m. spring hours. Until next Monday night, JoJo, I'll catch you on the flip side. Maybe. Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. It's got too many things going, I guess. Let's see here. All right, yeah. All right, guys. We'll catch you guys next Monday night. Y'all have a good week, great weekend. Can't wait to see you.
Have you ever stopped to think about what is in the water that your feet are sitting in between dives? Or worse yet, what you're handling with your hands when dumping the water from your boots in between dives? The Ekona Seeker boot eliminates that concern and the need to remove your boots at all. Thanks to a unique footbed with micro holes and a rubber sole with channels, excess water naturally drains from these boots while you wear them. Don't waste time between dives worrying about what is inside your boots, and don't trouble yourself or others by removing your boots. To get your pair of Seeker boots, visit your local Ekona dealer today.
We are the kings of the